I'd been at Brightscale Technologies for 6 years when Leo started. He was a junior from Purdue, skinny wrists, messy hair, polite to a fault. The kind of kid you wanted to root for. HR sent the usual onboarding memo. He'll be shadowing your product workflow for summer term. Please ensure access permissions stay limited. I didn't think much of it. Interns came and went. Most just wanted a line on their resume and a photo in front of the office mural. But Leo asked questions. Real ones. He wanted to know why we tracked feature flags manually, why our sprint board always showed 2 extra days of buffer, why I never joined the after-hours trivia Zooms. Because some of us actually finished tickets on time, I'd said once, joking. He'd laughed too hard. By mid-July, we'd been grinding on a metrics dashboard that was supposed to be my Q3 performance review centerpiece. It wasn't glamorous, just a visualization suite for product churn and user retention, but it was mine. Late nights, refactoring old Python pipelines, documenting endpoints that predated our current CTO. I'd built it to be bulletproof. Leo's job was supposed to be observational, help with minor QA, maybe log a few issues, but somewhere around the 3rd week, I caught him editing commits under my branch. Not pushing them, just staging, tinkering. His explanations were always casual. Oh, I was just checking if the formatter would flag it. I didn't correct him. I figured curiosity was better than apathy. That Friday, Rob, our product director, asked for a preview demo. He was the type who made meetings sound like TED Talks. Let's showcase innovation, he'd said, which usually meant show me something I can talk about in Monday's stand-up. I prepped the slide deck, made sure the staging server was up. Then, halfway through the demo, Rob turned to Leo. So this is your intern project, right? I thought he was joking. Leo's eyes darted to me. Not panicked, just weighing. Then he smiled. Yeah, we've been iterating on it, he said. That "we" hit harder than it should have. Rob nodded approvingly, the way managers do when they see free labor. Impressive work. I'll make sure it's mentioned in the newsletter. Afterward, Leo caught up with me by the coffee station. Hey, I didn't mean for that to sound like I was... It's fine, I said. Just make sure to clarify next time. But he didn't. By the end of the week, the company newsletter featured Leo's innovative dashboard overhaul, complete with a screenshot from my repo. My name was nowhere. I scrolled past the paragraph twice before realizing it wasn't a formatting error. It's strange how small thefts feel physical, like someone unplugged a part of you didn't know had power. The next Monday, I went to HR to clarify credit. It wasn't an official complaint. I just wanted it documented. Elise, our HR manager, had a face built for patience and a mug that said, "Let's circle back later." So you're saying he took your work? She asked, tapping her keyboard slowly. I'm saying he presented it as his. The dashboard, the documentation, everything. Do you have proof? Git logs, Slack threads. The pull requests are under my branch. She smiled the way people do when they don't want to get involved. Okay, just forward them to me. We'll review. That word, review, was HR code for bury until the quarter's over. Still, I sent the evidence. Slack snippets showing Leo asking questions like, "Can I show this version to Rob?" And my responses saying, "Sure, just cite my branch." I even exported commit diffs to prove authorship. Days passed. No follow-up. Then Leo started getting invited to meetings I wasn't in. We worked open floor, rows of desks broken only by glass partitions. It wasn't hard to overhear him rehearsing pitches with Rob or cracking jokes with the design team. I'd catch fragments. I had this idea for a dynamic API call, or, yeah, it was tricky integrating legacy endpoints. Always I. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that HR would fix it eventually, but each time my inbox pinged with another company-wide update about Leo's prototype scaling faster than expected, something inside me snapped tighter. By August, the dashboard had a code name, Pulse, and Leo was listed as the lead developer. The breaking point came during a Thursday all-hands. Rob was showing slides about upcoming releases, and there it was, Pulse, projected behind him in full color. "This started as an intern initiative, Chet," he said proudly. "Leo here took it from concept to reality in just 8 weeks." Applause. He called Leo to the front. I remember the sound of my chair scraping the floor when I stood. The echo carried longer than I meant it to. "Actually," I said, "that project wasn't his. It was mine." The room froze. Not dramatically, just with the quiet confusion of people realizing they'd missed a memo. Rob blinked. "Sorry, who's speaking?" "Ethan," I said. "I built Pulse before he joined." Leo's smile faltered. "That's not... I contributed." "You observed, Amisha," I said. "The codebase predates your internship." Rob looked uneasy. "We'll clarify offline," he said quickly, moving on. But it was too late. My outburst became office lore before lunch. The following day, Elise from HR called me in. "I understand you're upset," she began. "I'm not upset. I'm correcting a lie." "Well, perception-wise, it's already out there. The newsletter, the presentation. So retract it." She sighed. "Ethan, I can't. That would require internal review. Just maybe let it go. Leo's internship ends next week." That's when I realized HR wasn't neutral. They were protection, but not for me. When I got back to my desk, Leo had left a sticky note on my monitor. "No hard feelings, right? L." I stared at it for a long time. That weekend, I didn't open my laptop. I cleaned my apartment instead, scrubbed counters, emptied drawers. It's funny what you find when you start sorting. Old evaluation forms, sticky notes with forgotten logins, a USB labeled work backup. Out of habit, I plugged it in. Inside was an auto-exported folder from Slack's workspace backup tool. The timestamp matched when I was debugging automation scripts 2 months prior. I'd forgotten it even existed. Curiosity kicked in. I opened the folder and searched Leo. Messages filled the screen. Private ones. He'd been DMing Rob screenshots of my code, drafts of my documentation, even snippets from private channels where I'd vented about workload. One line stood out. "Ethan's good, but he's slow. If we launch this before his review, you could credit it as team mentorship." My pulse thudded so hard the laptop screen wobbled. I scrolled further. More chats, some between Leo and another intern, bragging about how HR doesn't check logs and how Rob loves underdogs. It wasn't just bragging. It was a blueprint. For a long time, I just sat there. I thought about emailing Rob, or scheduling another HR meeting, or just letting it die quietly. But every scenario ended with the same image. Someone else's name on my work. So I started archiving. Every relevant Slack message, every Git commit header, every HR ticket timestamp. I organized them into folders. Proof, HR, ignored, Leo direct quotes. I didn't plan revenge, just documentation. But revenge has a way of finding you once you make order out of chaos. Monday morning, I walked into the office early. The building smelled of burnt coffee and printer toner. I sat at my desk, opened a blank email, and addressed it to Elise, Rob, and the HR general inbox. Subject: clarification regarding Pulse, project authorship. Then I attached a zip file. Slack logs, Leo. Zip. Inside were over 200 messages, neatly labeled by date and channel. I didn't editorialize. I just wrote one line. Since HR requested proof, I'm submitting these for review. Then I hit send. The The message sent at 8:27 a.m. By 9, the office was whispering. Elise called me in before lunch. Rob was there too, his tie loosened, eyes darting between us. "Ethan," Elise said carefully, "where did you get those logs? They were auto-exported during a debug run. Company property." She glanced at Rob. "You realize these contain private conversations?" "About me," I said, "and about company data, including client information he wasn't authorized to access." Rob shifted uncomfortably. "This could be a violation of privacy policy. So was taking my code." For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Elise exhaled slowly. "We'll handle this internally. Please don't discuss it with anyone else." I left her office knowing exactly what that meant. But the difference was, this time, I had receipts and witnesses. Because the email wasn't just sent to HR, I'd CC'd myself. And in the flurry of replies that morning, a few other managers had already seen the attachments. By the end of the day, Leo's desk was empty. He didn't come in Tuesday. That night, my inbox lit up with a single message from Elise. "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. The issue has been resolved. Please refrain from further sharing of internal communications." No apology, no correction, just silence dressed as closure. But silence was fine, because the next morning, the internal company chat had a new post under Had Announcements. Effective immediately, the Pulse project will be reassigned to Ethan Ward for ongoing maintenance and documentation. I didn't celebrate. I just minimized the tab and kept working. Still, every so often, I'd see that sticky note in my mind. No hard feelings, right? L. No, Leo, not hard, just honest. But honesty has a longer tail than people expect. Because 2 weeks later, HR called again. Not for me, for Rob. Someone upstairs had read the logs closely enough to notice more than just stolen code. There were budget approvals, data leaks, even offhand mentions of side deals with contractors. The Slack logs didn't just expose Leo. They painted a mural of how Brightscale operated and how far the rot went. By the next quarter, Rob's profile was gone from the company page. Elise transitioned to another opportunity. And I got a polite invitation to lead internal audit for developer workflow compliance. It wasn't revenge. It was gravity. By the time I got to the office, the mood had changed. You could feel it in the elevator, the silence between coworkers, the way people avoided eye contact, the low hum of gossip humming just beneath polite smiles. The Slack logs I'd sent had detonated something bigger than I'd intended. I wanted vindication. What I got was a full-blown investigation. When the doors opened on the 10th floor, the usual smell of burnt espresso and whiteboard markers hit me. Our open-plan desks were the same. Glass, aluminum, fake plants, but the air felt charged. HR's corner was dark. Elise's nameplate was gone. I sat down, logged in, and stared at my inbox. There it was again. Internal audit, 10:00 a.m., conference room 3C. I poured myself coffee I didn't want and tried to remember how all this started. Just a line in a newsletter, a single misattributed project. Now half the management team was whispering about legal exposure. At 9:59, I went to the meeting room. Inside were 3 people I didn't recognize. Suits sharper than ours, laptops already open. One of them introduced himself as Victor from compliance. The woman beside him nodded politely and said, "Tessa, legal counsel." The third stayed quiet, just typing. "Ethan," Victor started, "thank you for joining. We're reviewing documentation you submitted regarding the Pulse project and subsequent communications." "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He scrolled through something on his tablet. "You forwarded Slack logs to HR on August 28th. Those logs contained conversations beyond your direct working relationship with the intern. We'd like to understand your intent in forwarding them." "My intent?" I repeated. "To prove authorship of my work. To show HR that the intern misrepresented my project. He nodded slowly. And you were aware those messages also contained discussions between management and other personnel? I didn't edit the logs, I said. I sent what existed. Tessa glanced up from her notes. Did you at any point disseminate these logs outside company channels? No. Post them? Forward them to anyone else? No. She nodded, jotting something down. Victor leaned back. We appreciate your cooperation. There will be an internal review of compliance procedures. For now, please refrain from discussing this with colleagues. It was Elise's line again, but this time it carried weight. By the following week, the audit was all anyone whispered about. You'd hear fragments near the break room. They're checking Rob's emails. Some contractor invoices don't match. People started wiping old Slack threads, deleting old DMs. I kept my head down. I didn't want to be the hero. I just wanted to work. But you can't unring a bell once it's gone corporate. The new HR lead, a woman named Monica, called me in a few days later. Her tone was friendly. Too friendly. Hey, Ethan. Just wanted to check in. How are you feeling about all this? Fine, I said. Just working. She smiled in that HR way that doesn't reach the eyes. Good. Just know you did the right thing bringing it forward. It's rare for people to document things as thoroughly as you did. That sounded like praise, but it felt like a warning. Before I left, she added, You'll be copied on some audit follow-up items, just for record keeping. That's how it began. The transition from wronged employee to internal point of contact. By September, they'd reassigned me entirely. No more front-end tickets or sprint planning. My title changed in the system to Internal Audit Associate, Technical Liaison. I didn't get a raise. I did get a new badge color. At first, it was quiet work. Pulling commit histories, tracing data access patterns, cross-referencing time logs. But soon it got heavier. Password audits, access logs, deleted repository branches, things I'd never seen before. One day, Monica dropped by my desk. Legal. Wants to know if you can check the staging server's pull history from March. That's before Leo's internship. Exactly, she said. We think Pulse existed even earlier, maybe under a different code name. That's when I realized this wasn't about Leo anymore. When I opened the old repo, I saw commit messages tagged by users who'd left the company months ago. Branches labeled Temp Build V2 and Rob Private. Inside were half-finished code snippets that matched my original architecture. Same folder naming, same JSON schema, only older. Someone had been building Pulse long before I joined the company. It wasn't plagiarism, it was resurrection. I went deeper. Checked timestamps, user IDs. Rob's username appeared everywhere. He'd been recycling dead projects, renaming them, assigning them to new developers, and presenting them as innovation. That's why he'd been so eager to push Leo forward. It made the old code look new again. I printed a few diffs and walked straight to Monica's office. She was mid-call, but waved me in. You'll want to see this, Baseb, I said, laying the pages on her desk. Her expression shifted from polite to alert. Is this what I think it is? Rob's legacy projects. He's been rebranding them to meet KPI targets. She flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing. This could be fraud. I didn't sign up for this, I said quietly. No one ever does, she replied. 2 days later, legal summoned me again. This time, the tone was different. We appreciate your diligence, Victor said, but we'll need you to sign a confidentiality agreement. Everything you've uncovered falls under ongoing investigation. He slid the papers across the table. Thick stack. Too thick for comfort. I scanned the first few lines. Non-disclosure, non-retaliation, internal security. Does this mean I'm part of the investigation? You're a cooperating employee, he said. It protects you. It sounded reassuring until I read the fine print. Any breach, even accidental, could lead to termination. I signed anyway. For a while it worked. The audit wrapped up. The office returned to its usual hum. People stopped whispering. Leo's name became a cautionary footnote. Rob's photo disappeared from LinkedIn, and HR started hosting ethics and tech workshops like nothing had ever happened. But some nights, I'd stay late. Not because I had to, but because I couldn't stop checking the logs. There was one last Slack thread I hadn't opened. It was between Leo and a user named RK. The message was short. I sent the full repo. Should be ready for transfer by Monday. Transfer. Not presentation. Transfer. And the timestamp? 3 days before the demo, the same day Rob scheduled that surprise intern showcase. He hadn't just stolen credit, he'd offloaded code. I forwarded the message to myself, encrypted it, and stored it offline. Something in my gut said I'd need it later. The next week, Victor called again. Ethan, we're closing the case, but off record, good work. You saved us a lawsuit. I wanted to believe that was the end, but on Monday, a man I didn't know showed up at my desk. Suit, visitor badge, polite smile. Ethan Ward? Yes. He handed me an envelope. Legal subpoena. You've been listed as a witness in an upcoming case involving Brightscale and former employees. My stomach dropped. That night I sat in my apartment with the envelope unopened. My laptop hummed on the counter, blue light flickering over the stack of old reports. It smelled like burnt coffee again. Same as that morning months ago when I hit send. I just wanted credit for my work. Now I was part of an investigation that might end careers. Around 11, I finally opened the envelope. Inside was a court date and a list of exhibits. My name was attached to 3. Slack logs leo.zip, pulse repo.audit.pdf, and server history march.json. They weren't just my files anymore. They were evidence. The following weeks blurred together. Calls with corporate counsel, review sessions, non-disclosure reminders. My name showed up in email chains with people who had escrow after theirs. Leo never resurfaced. Rob's lawyer tried to argue misattribution and mentorship confusion, but the evidence was too clean. My Slack exports had metadata timestamps, channel IDs, everything. When I testified, the courtroom lights felt too bright. The judge asked if I'd altered any messages. No, Isil, I said. I only organized what already existed. Opposing counsel tried to twist it. So you admit you accessed private communications beyond your scope? I looked him dead in the eye. I accessed files generated by my code. If that's beyond my scope, maybe the company should review who wrote its automation. Even the stenographer smirked. Afterward, outside the courthouse, Monica met me on the steps. You did well, she said quietly. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's harder than it sounds. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a letter of promotion. Senior Systems Integrity Analyst. A real raise this time. Effective immediately, she said. Consider it overdue. I walked home that evening through light rain, the city buzzing with the usual Thursday restlessness. Cars, neon reflections, a busker playing a harmonica off-key. Everything ordinary. But in my chest, something felt lighter. Not triumph exactly, but closure. The kind you don't clap for. The kind you exhale. Still, when I reached my apartment, I saw the old sticky note again. I'd tucked it under a magnet on the fridge months ago, half as a joke. No hard feelings, right? L. I stared at it for a while. Then I pulled it off and dropped it into the trash. That night, before shutting down my computer, I checked one last thing. The original Pulse dashboard. It still ran flawlessly. Data clean, graphs steady, uptime near perfect. The kind of thing no one claps for after the drama fades. I smiled, hit deploy, and logged out. Weeks later, an email arrived from a university address I didn't recognize. Subject: Thank you. From someone who learned the hard way. It was Leo. You were right. I messed up. I lost the offer I had lined up after Brightscale. I'm starting over. I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted to say, I know now how badly I burned you. I read it twice, then hit archive. Forgiveness wasn't the point. Accountability was. Months later, Brightscale published a public statement. We are committed to transparent innovation and ethical collaboration. They never mentioned my name. That was fine. The people who mattered knew. Sometimes justice doesn't echo. It just stays quiet and steady, like code running clean after 100 failed builds. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.